Hey guys. So, PGL Bucharest has just wrapped up, and I want to say that I've really enjoyed both of the PGL events this year for getting to showcase different teams. This event we had Falcons pick up their first trophy of the year, and at PGL Cluj-Napoca, we had Mouse pick up a trophy, which this is very helpful for helping build narratives for teams outside of, the spirits, vitalities of the world who are at the truly elite level. But besides the two grand finalists, we also had another third place decider match, much like I previously expressed my enjoyment for, between Faze and Complexity, where Faze pretty handily won. But this event also went a long way to shatter some of our confidence in the Faze system at this point in time and in some of the players. But we'll get into all that in just a minute. We have to, start thinking about everyone else that came through. But I want to avoid all of the highbrow conversations to just talk about one thing and one thing only. Complexity made a fucking semifinal. From the beginning of the year and the loss of Elige, no one, including myself, had many expectations for this roster. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that despite, being a Complexity fan, my jersey is, somewhere in my closet. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was the most optimistic motherfucker on the face of the earth when they signed their two new players of, Nyx and Sixy. And so to see both of them get this LAN playoff experience, succeed under the lights to some capacity, and have reassuring moments of confidence building, it's heartening to see, and it's great to see, and it's a huge win for the guys over at Complexity, just to show that despite what everyone wants to believe with Elige being gone, this team is not dead. This team is far from over, with Halzerk being the fifth highest rated individual of the event, and Grim being not far behind him, also being in the top 10. It's fantastic to see. That's really all there is to say it, and especially with the major coming up in the home state of Texas, and having Dallas shortly before that. Complexity was not a team that attended Dallas last year, and having Elige on your roster, having that be a big investment. A lot of the guys at the Complexity offices were probably very hopeful to have their team make some sort of miracle run at the hometown event last year, and it just was utterly flat the entire way through. So I'm very excited to see this Complexity step up with its hopefully home crowd advantage that it can gain, or the home crowd motivation for that advantage that they would gain for getting to play in front of the home crowds. And with teams skipping lesser events, such as, some Spirit has already announced that they will be skipping IEM Melbourne. So pretty much good luck, It's going to be Grand Slam for Vitality, or it'll be Grand Slam in Dallas. And I'm hoping it's in Dallas just for the pure cinema of the, fuck you Apex run back, the year after G-Stu. It would be absolutely great narrative juice for Apex. But before I finish out on Cole, just to start rambling, I again just want to say that every single one of the players looked fantastic this event. While Nyx definitely had one or two moments where he got too excited, that is something that can easily be fixed with quality coaching and quality investment in their players, which even though they no longer have TC behind them, they do have Messioso stepping up as a temporary coach, and he has shown to be great so far. So I have plenty of confidence in their system to help him address the flaws in his game, while also not discouraging him from the success that he was able to find at this event. As I previously stated, Grim and Halzerk were absolutely killing it, and JT was leading in some games, both fragging and calling from the top. It's just incredibly heartening overall, and I cannot wait to see what they do for the rest of the year. Moving on, since I mentioned Elige and I mentioned Faze, I'll finally get into it. I've mentioned it a couple of times. I think that Faze are just utterly lost. It does not help that Brokey's having one of his worst years so far. He's someone that we expect such high highs from, and to see him being so bottom of the barrel for so long, he burned to death 100-0 in a molly this event, if that tells you how off his game he is. And the last time that happened to someone was Nexa before getting cut after Dallas. So, if that gives you an indication of where his headspace is at. But overall, this entire, I went into it briefly with my last episode that I did of Counterculture with Donnie, but Elige is someone who brings, and I will preface all of this, Again, I will preface all of this. I am just some guy on the internet who does not know these people in real life, and this is baseless speculation for fun of sports, you know? I've only ever met Elige for 20 seconds outside Impact at Dallas last year, and I'm pretty sure I made a fool of myself. So, again, baseless speculation, but I'm someone who has competed for my entire life. I've done competitive sports my entire life. I know every type that is involved in competition and how they end up affecting a team environment. And I'm going to baselessly speculate that at this point in time, Elige has been the, top dog for so long that his desperation to win and his desperation to succeed are detrimental. And I think that it is fine to have that desperation, and I'm not asking him to get rid of it, but I think that the way that the current team is structured is exacerbating it. Because if you go and you watch, some of Kerrigan's videos where he releases the comms for Faze, which I highly recommend, they give you so much more insight than any analyst could ever speculate on. Elige is not the second voice of this team. Elige is sometimes not even the third voice of this team. So for a player who was the guy in North America, no one could really step up to him. He was not the IGL, but in the same way that Nico, if he tells you and has an idea, you're going to listen. Elige was that guy. And now within Faze, it is Kerrigan, then Frozen, then maybe Elige. And so he is not having as much input as I think people are expecting him to have. And so he has these few moments where he is letting that desperation get the better of him. People have called it these hero moments, the main character syndrome that Cadian used to exhibit. And I think that he is just trying to do too much without having the proper avenues to voice his ideas or properly implement what he sees to be as the winning strategy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as looking at him historically, maybe what they were looking for was a plug-and-play weapon for Rops. But I will tell two things. One, Rops and Elige are probably at the exact opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to demeanor within team and or within the server. There's some rounds where you can hear Elige, just the genuine frustration get out of him. Not even that he's yelling at someone, but just that, no, like genuinely just upset and disappointed at the circumstances and not at a person. I guarantee you Rops didn't do that. And I'm not saying that Rops is better for not doing it. I am just saying that they are different individuals. And so I think the challenge of Elige is far greater than they anticipated. And it also doesn't help that the thing I will stand by to this day is that Rain is one of the best, if not the best, other than, maybe Nico, yard player in the history of Nuke. And, messing with one of the all-time consistent riflers will never sit right with me. I will never go, yes, take spots away from Rain. Yes, do this. Yes, do that. It's just, they look so flat all the time. And it's just incredibly frustrating to see, as they are one of the most entertaining teams in Counter-Strike and one of the all-time great teams. And Brokey is one of the all-time oppers, in my opinion. His aggression, his flashiness, it breaks my heart to see, because, the suggestion came up this event because he got the MVP and will be leaving the team shortly. They should sign Dexter. And that's not a terrible idea, because he's the only other person in the scene right now who's making those Brokey-like plays, who's, short range, scoped in, aggressive combat opping. And it is everything that we miss out of Brokey, and I don't know what they need to do to remotivate him. And if it's the threat of Dexter coming in, maybe that helps, but Dexter absolutely could fit in for Brokey, but I will still pull for him until the end of time, because I think he can wake up any day and be that electric opper. And I just, they made the past 3 major finals in a row. I have faith in him to pull it around. They could make a final in Austin, and we would all still be eating our words of just, shit, man, I guess they still have it, but who knows? I think Faze are struggling, and way I'll phrase it is that Elige and Simple are two sides of the same coin. Simple was someone who had this goal that he was chasing for so long, and everything in its power came in to try and prevent it from happening. The war, all of his historical losses from the time that he was a young individual. He has tried, and he finally wins it. wins that first major after coming out of the online era, after CS no longer being a certainty in his life. Man, I don't know about you guys, when you achieve something like that, when you achieve a lifelong goal of athletics or mental fortitude, you either, get hungry for the next challenge, or the release of stress of finally achieving it just kind of mellows you out for the rest of your life. And I don't know that Simple will ever be able to recover that fire. And I think Elige is the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Elige is what happens if you never get that closure. He has his Grand Slam, but he didn't get that major. He isn't on a long-term dominant top-tier team. He's still chasing that desperation, getting older, wanting to succeed now, wanting to be better. And so he still has the fire. And I think that, as I've already sort of outlined in this entire ramble, which I've already gone way off script for, it's going to be a challenge to bottle that desperation, but keep it, because that's what's driving him and will cause him to practice extra hard, study extra hard, and perform better. And something needs to happen with this Faze roster. I don't know what it is, but they're known for their major results, and if they don't deliver at the result of the major, if they don't show up at the major, something has to change. Something has to change. I don't know what it is, but all right, enough about Faze. G2, our first grand finalist. This was their swan song for m0NESY, as he is going to Falcons, their opponent. So salt in the wound, yay. I will not spend a lot of time on this, as I think m0NESY deserves his own video and summary of his time in G2. But all I will say is that m0NESY in G2 is the stuff of legends. He came in as this untested academy player that we all knew had a ton of potential. It was just whether or not he would be able to adapt and deliver on that same degree of high potential. And he did. He did the entire time. He brought G2 multiple trophies. He improved the careers of every single person he played alongside. He massively improved Nico's trophy cabinet, who he is going to rejoin and has built a lifelong friendship with, it seems. But, that G2 team of, m0NESY, Nico, JKS, Hunter, and Hooksy, whether you loved them or hated them, defined Counter-Strike for a very long time. And I will for sure miss G2 m0NESY in the way that I miss G2 Nico, as he's become synonymous with the brand. It's his handle on Twitter. But also, someone please, for the love of God, get Malbs a sports psychologist and give him a huge hug, because the dude is stressing out in things that are far beyond his control and far outside his control. And if you haven't listened to m0NESY's interview with Devilwalk and Banks on their podcast, go listen to it. It gives so much insight. And Malbs, my dude, it is not on you. You will grow, you will improve. It is not your sole responsibility for the success of this team. There are things that are far too out of your control and far too damning. You'll be just fine. But someone help him and give him a big hug. I feel bad for the guy. All right. So, final topic. As a team, I don't need to say anything about Falcons with their funding and with their yada yada, for their strategy for entering Counter-Strike and building teams, and what it means culturally, what it means to the sport. There are far more educated people and knowledgeable people in the scene who have given long speeches and long videos about that can be far more informative. And I encourage you to go seek them out and listen to them if that's what you want to hear about, because I am just not educated enough on that to speak on it. But as a Counter-Strike team, Falcons continues some of the goodwill of the heroic core from last year, which I loved. I've enjoyed Kicksand for a very long time. Dexter finally getting to lift his first trophy and getting an MVP. Also, sorry, Kicksand's first trophy, but Dexter being someone who has had a relatively unlucky career since his exit from Spirit, spending most of his time battling visa issues, battling the ability to even play the game, finally getting a trophy lift, finally getting an MVP. It is an incredibly heartwarming result for him, and I cannot wait to see where he lands next. It's also incredibly important to note that during his winner interview, Kixan highly credited Zonic for this win. So that is a, tick in the narrative against the Zonic fraud watch, which obviously Zonic is historically in no way a fraud, but his performance in the past 2 years of Falcons had left quite a lot to be desired, so this can go a bit of a ways towards finally starting to redeem or build that back up in the modern day. But great final. Falcons pretty much stomped the entire way. Tessis and Degster top fragged, and with Falcons even potentially looking at CjDoesCs to replace what I would assume would be Tessis. Both of those players are the top 2 players of the event that they won. They can go anywhere, they'll be fine. I have no problems with that, but this now poises some fantastic momentum for Falcons. Going into the previous major, we kind of pegged it as Nico's major to lose, and now this is sort of the Vitality major to lose. So will Falcons be able to step up in Melbourne and prevent the Grand Slam and push it back to Dallas? Or what's going to happen in the near future? Let me know down below what you guys think. Only time will tell, and we'll just have to watch Melbourne and Dallas, which, by the way, see you there for. But anyways, thanks for watching, and have a great day, guys. Let me know down below what you think's going on with the scene, who you think's going to win the next couple of events. Is anyone really going to be able to stop Vitality? What the hell do we do with Faze? Yes, complexity! But have a nice day, guys. Deuces.